Well, good evening, everybody. It's lovely to see you all again. It's a beautiful sunny night out there, and Mental Health Awareness Week, so we'll probably get a chance to talk about that. But I thought what we'd do is just quickly go around, just see who we've got tonight, just do a brief introduction. Let's come first of all to you, Carl. I'd like to come to you first.
Hi, my name is Carl Tring-Willis, and I'm the Community Development Manager at Derby City Council, working with a team that are responding to the COVID challenge.
Brilliant. On my screen below you, there is James.
Hi, hello James. There, my name is James Lewis. I'm an auctioneer and valuer at Bamford's Auctioneers in Derby.
Brilliant. Next to you, I have Helen.
Hi, my name is Helen Kennett. I'm in charge of UK Government Relations at Rolls-Royce.
Lovely to see you, Helen. And then above you, I've got Matt.
Hi, Amanda. Another week's gone by.
Oh, how many weeks have you been doing this now?
No idea. A few.
You know what day it is. You're looking to get.
Anyway, you asked. I'm Councillor Matthew Holmes, Deputy Leader of Derby City Council.
Yeah, and as I say, it must be Christmas, surely. I've got no idea. This is how mad I'm going. And then above that, Sophie, if you just like to say a quick hello.
I'm Sophie. I work for Amanda in her constituency office in Derby North.
Brilliant. Thanks ever such a lot. So just before we get started tonight, Helen's very kindly agreed to come along and just have a little, give us an update. I know, Helen, you can't stay for very long, but I just think clearly, you know, from a Derby perspective, we've had some news this week in terms of Rolls-Royce. And I just wonder if you could hear firsthand, if there's anything that you could tell us, please.
Sure, thank you. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, especially on a week like this, which has been a very difficult week for the company and very difficult week for our people. As you know, that the announcement that we made earlier on this week is as a result of what's been happening with the impact on the aviation and the aerospace sector because of COVID-19. And you will have seen us say over the last couple of weeks and months about the impact of that. Back in March, we saw 50% of flying hours. And then in April, we saw that 90% of flights were not taking place. And as everybody who knows Rolls-Royce knows, that that's obviously going to have a very significant impact on our immediate revenues, but also it basically is a massive change to the whole of the aviation and aerospace sector. And we've seen our airlines obviously flying less. We've seen our Airbus and Boeing customers change their demand signal. And when both of those demand signals, both from the airframers and our customers, changes, then that then means that we also have to adapt and change too. And what we've seen is that in the short term, the demand is just not going to be there. Obviously, there's talk at the moment about as and when flights will resume. But even if it's the case that there are air corridors in between particular countries in the UK, ours is a global business and this impact is global. And so therefore we need aviation flying at scale, again, as it was at the beginning of the year, for our company to recover into the position that it used to be in. So this year, we've already said that we're going to be producing about 200 fewer engines in Derby. Obviously, with fewer aircraft flying, it means that we don't need and we won't have need for so many people working in maintenance, repair and overhaul, because again, the demand just isn't there. So the decisions that the company have taken are very difficult decisions, and we're now going into the consultation process. The 9,000 figure that we announced this week is a global figure, although obviously Derby as the centre and the home of our civil aerospace business is going to feel an impact. So those consultations with our employee reps and our trade unions are happening now. We're obviously talking to local representatives, and I've spoken to Amanda a couple of times this week, and I've spoken to Chris Poulter and others locally. And we're part of the Derby City Council Economic Recovery Task Force, and we've actually got a meeting, which I'm sure you're probably joining tomorrow, Amanda. So now is the time for some very difficult conversations. As Warren East said at the end of his statement earlier on this week, we've been through difficult times before, but we've come out and we've done amazing things, and that's where we hope we can take the business in the future.
Just unmuting. Thank you, Helena. I know it's been devastating news for us here in Derby, and I guess the speculation as well, and as you rightly say, we've got a task force meeting tomorrow. I wonder, well, I know you can't stay, but has anybody got any particular question to ask Helen before I just say, you know, I think that was a very informative update for us. Anybody got any question on that?
I think just to say, Amanda, from a city council's point of view, we're already working with Rolls-Royce, the reps of Rolls-Royce, the unions and council officers and MPs, of course, as you know, via the task force to ensure that we support our skilled workers in the city. We will bounce back from this, but I think there's lots of things we can actually do to support Rolls-Royce, but also support the supply chains too and the skilled workers within the city. Together we'll be able to get through this and hopefully be stronger on the other side. But no one's saying that it isn't a significant blow for the city, and we all need to pull together now and work out how we can actually support the workers and the companies involved. Okay,
thank you. James, you were going to say something, sorry.
No, I just wondered what percentage of the workers in Derby were aero engine based, and what other lines of work could Rolls-Royce look towards, because there is a big feeling that or a significant number of people feel that we've had a big change in habit, and certain people like that change and might decide they don't wish to go and take as many flights in the future. There's submarine work, isn't there, and other work that
yes,
you do?
That's right. Yes. Yeah, so Derby is the home of a number of things for us. As I had said, it's the home of our civil aerospace business globally. It's also the headquarters of a number of our corporate functions, so for example, the HR function and finance and legal. And then we do have our submarines business at Rainsway. And just to remind everybody that our defence business is not subject to the changes that we have announced this week. Our submarines business and our defence business more broadly has not been impacted by COVID-19. In terms of future flight projections, this is obviously where the forecasting comes in terms of when people are going to be able to resume flying. And that comes down to when those routes are going to be able to be opened up again, which comes down to governments domestically but internationally working together. So there's a government piece, and then there's a customer confidence piece. But I think that what we can say is that based on the forecast before this is that there is a very deep and a long desire to fly. And aviation obviously is critical to lots of air freight and the way in which we get trade and goods moving around the world. So even if there might be a change in a little bit of passenger demand, that is still going to be there. And if you look at the economies that are up and coming and growing, there's often a very clear connection in between increasing GDP of a country and desire to fly. So we think in the long term, and actually in the medium term, that there's still very much that customer demand. It's just how soon we get out of the position that we're in, which is the need to get aviation flying sooner rather than later. But I think it's a really good point you make, James, about how there are other activities that Rolls-Royce does in Derby, and we shouldn't forget that. But we do understand and recognise, obviously, the iconic role that our civil aerospace business has, both in the local economy and also to the local community.
Thank you. Now, we've just had, just before you go, Magnus, hello, lovely to see you. Do you have, I think we need to unmute you. Did you have a question you want? Just say who you are, please, because it is slightly, we started, I do apologise.
Sorry, I was a little bit late. I had technological difficulties. Magnus Harris, I'm the Executive Medical Director at UHDB. And it was just to say to Helen, to pass on our thanks. I've been working with Rolls-Royce's Medical Director. A lot of our visors have been 3D printed by Rolls-Royce. And currently we're working with Rolls-Royce engineers. They've got specialist cameras that take about 13,000 frames a second, and we've been doing some research work on PPE and aerosol generation with the Rolls-Royce engineers. So it's just to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magnus. That's really great to hear from you personally. I've seen some of the comments of thanks via other colleagues, but it's really great to hear that myself. And I know how committed our people have been to that activity. And the really amazing thing is that they've just been doing it themselves as little teams. This is not a central company approach that we're going to make face visors. People just knew that the need was out there and that they had the 3D printing skills, and they took it upon themselves to do that. So I'm really pleased that they're having a good local impact, and we'll support that for as long as you need it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Helen, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. It's been lovely to see you, but appreciate the the honesty then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Magnus, lovely to see you. Really lovely to have you here. We're just going through that. We just wanted to give Helen an opportunity because clearly Rolls-Royce situation has been quite very significant, I would say, here in Derby. But Sophie, can we have the first question then, please?
You can. So the first question is in regards to the task force. It says, Derby City Council have launched a coronavirus economic recovery task force, which mentions making Derby a more environmentally sustainable city. This is an opportunity to solve two issues. One is the green economic recovery. Two is decarbonisation and phasing out fossil fuels as a vital part of tackling the climate crisis. What is the Economic Task Force doing to ensure that Derby City and businesses within it transition to a decarbonised economy?
Thank you. And that was sent in to us earlier. I'm going to come to you first, Matt, but then I think I'm going to extend it out and just say, what should we do as well? So Matt, first of all, please.
Well, the good news on that is, and I spoke about it before, and probably every week actually, because there's many questions quite rightly coming in this area. Two big things for Derby City is approximately £160 million from government for something called the Transforming Cities Fund, which has been successful in securing jointly with Nottingham City, and another 17 million or so, something called Future Mobility Zones. And again, that's a joint project with Nottingham City. And in a broad way, because there's a lot of detail in this, it's about providing a sustainable future for Derby and obviously our area in terms of including Nottingham. That is better public transport links, new technologies, cycle provision, electric transport and the infrastructure that goes with that, and also zero emissions transport too, and the pivoting to that from what we have now, which is not so much a heavy reliance anymore, but a reliance on fossil fuels. So we have, the good news is that we have that pot of money that we're now furiously looking at to see what we can bring forward as soon as we can to start looking at those schemes. It's very detailed. It is available on the Derby City website if you want to have a look at more detail, if anyone's interested. But obviously, the whole of Derby and the whole of Nottingham and the region is going to hear a lot more about those plans. And it's very exciting. It involves a significant amount of investment very soon, you know, in terms of the short, the medium and the long term. So yeah, I think we've got to review it, because in light of COVID coming out of it, we know people are probably going to be reluctant and actually being advised in the short term anyway to avoid public transport if they can, and active travel is where it's at. And so we need to just review what plans we have to see whether we need to tweak any of those things, or the projects and the priorities that we have within those two schemes and our bids. Are they still relevant now? Do we need to tweak them? And that work's actually ongoing at the moment, and we've started to actually do that in earnest now. The Cabinet, the City Council Cabinet, we will be officially accepting that funding next month. But as I say, that we're not waiting for that. We're actually moving forward now. I could speak all night on the various schemes.
We'll move on to James.
That gives you a very broad idea of what we're doing. There's a significant amount of money available to us.
I always love to hear the things that you're doing, Matt. It's always just it's so fun. James, anything to? I mean, obviously, I know we're talking the broader thing, but anything to add to that?
Yeah, Amanda, we've talked in the past about a potential for Derby City to reward businesses for their carbon neutral status. And so far, I haven't seen a great initiative to, apart from you, Amanda, in your suggestions, for the city to go to businesses and say, right, this is what we want you to do. These are ways of doing it. And perhaps an annual green award for the Derby City, and have different sectors of business where people can be looked at and said, well, okay, you've got solar panels on the roof, you've recycled, you've bought a field, you're planting trees, you're doing this, you're doing that, and maybe have an annual business award for different sectors of Derbyshire business. And I think if it was in conjunction with Radio Derby and the Derby Evening Telegraph, something like that. It would be something that local businesses would love to get behind.
Thank you. And it's you've just one of the things we were doing, as you rightly say, was looking at Earth Day. Sophie, I don't know whether we've got Matt Eyre on the phone, because he actually was on the line, but he was actually looking at something around that.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, looking at the Earth event, doing awards and things for local businesses that are taking the initiative. Yeah.
And one other thing I'd like to say is that we have very much a throwaway society. I'm very proud of the fact that there are plenty of auction rooms out there, but as a whole, the auction room world is one of total recycling. And instead of going out and buying new all the time, go and see what other people have put on the market, and instead of buying new and importing it from China, buy something secondhand. It's more environmentally friendly. It's certainly more financially sensible, and you know, it helps us all. It helps the planet.
No, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Magnus, what about yourself? I mean, is there anything that you guys are doing in terms of the environment?
Yeah, so there's a carbon neutral charter that we signed up to. We're very aware as an organisation, as a trust, that we've got to reduce our carbon footprint. However, it is quite difficult. It's not easy. If I think about the electricity supply to Royal Derby Hospital, on occasion, we almost haven't got a big enough electricity supply to run all the scanners that we want. And within the next few years, we'll be looking to put a bigger pipe in. So it's difficult to run it in a carbon neutral way, but that is the state today.
Can I add, Amanda, about
yes.
when we're talking about climate change? So obviously, people will probably say, well, what Councillor Holmes has said is heavily towards transport and pivoting towards sustainable transport and zero emissions and clean air and all those things, which obviously are one of our main priorities. But the action on climate change, which James has touched on there, about what we could do to actually work with businesses. And we've always said, and we agreed pre-COVID, £3 million to tackle climate change as a city, and that's a significant, significant amount of money. But it was very clear when we stated that was our investment, was that we're not going to do this on our own. We need other stakeholders and the whole city as a whole to work with us on it, and the kind of ideas that James has just said and suggested should all be in the pot, because it is a joint effort. We cannot do this on our own, and it is actually wrong for everyone to just expect the city to come up with
couldn't agree more.
And we work together on it. The government are committed to this, the local council is, we know that businesses are, we know from what Magnus has just said there are obviously caveats and challenges for a very large organisations for very good reasons in some cases, but we can all work together and find a way forward. And the one thing that we do have is funding for this and a commitment. So, I think it's actually something which Derby is very well placed to actually progress.
Yeah, and what we'll do, Sophie, is we'll give our absolute guarantee. We started doing the Earth Day, it was all planned. Unfortunately, the situation made that not happen. And we were doing exactly that. We were trying to reward excellence, encourage people to do all the things that help save the environment holistically. That was across all sectors. Carl, what about yourself? What are you doing to save the environment, or what do you think we should be doing?
I think the other important sector is the community and voluntary sector. We've got some fantastic organisations in the city, and within the sector there's always the opportunity to be creative and innovative. So within our sector in the city, we've got a number of groups that are working around the transport agenda. We've also got a number of groups that are working around the green agenda, green open spaces and upcycling projects. We've got some fantastic small charities doing some great work in making sure that old goods are upcycled for new purposes and stuff. So, don't underestimate the contribution that small groups can make, and particularly those local charities. I think they've got a part to play as well. And of course, they kind of lead on the activism as well. So they're the ones banging the drum to keep that very much on the agenda, quite rightly.
Do you have a quick example of a couple of those charities?
Yeah, so we've got a project. We've got a number of projects around upcycling of furniture. So the YMCA, they have well, the charity shops are a classic example.
Yeah, true.
Saying, you know, and we're increasingly, a lot of people are saying the high street's becoming filled with charity shops, as if that's a bad thing. I actually don't think it is such a bad thing. You know, as I say, second hand is the ultimate recycling. But we've also got other projects that are like repurposing things. You know, there's a lot of like shed projects. So, you know, ex-engineers and designers, you know, retired engineers and designers, you know, repurposing items. And our green open spaces, again, that all contributes to the environmental agenda. And what people perhaps don't know is that, you know, Derby's got some fantastic parks, green flag status parks, that are all community owned, in the sense that there's a great deal of ownership around it. And they're driving those kind of initiatives to increase wildlife, you know, increase natural planting, meadow planting, tree planting. So there's a whole raft, if you like, of diversity within the sector, and they're all contributing to the same goal.
No, thank you. It sounds an exciting opportunity actually for everybody, and I love wildflowers. There's nothing quite as lovely as seeing them bees just bobbing into them and butterflies. Anyway, Sophie, let's have the next question.
The next question. With this week being Mental Health Awareness Week, what are you doing to look after your own mental health and those of the people around you, especially during such a difficult time?
Oh, Magnus, shall I come to you first?
Thank you. So on a personal level, I'm probably exercising more than I would normally.
That's not a bad thing.
I'm probably drinking more than or less than I do normally.
Really?
Given the pubs are closed. But we've at work we've got a full wraparound package of wellbeing that our HR directors instituted. You know, and that you're right. It's absolutely a taxing time. There's lots of anxiety among staff. There's anxiety among staff that are shielding. But we've got a full wellbeing offer. We've got 2 clinical occupational psychologists that work full time. We're taking referrals through from our Rocky Health. We're taking self-referrals through. We've got wellbeing rooms. We've got quiet rooms. We've got breakout rooms all throughout the hospital in places you never imagined to see them. I've been on intensive care at RDH a number of times. They've got a very quiet room where you can just be still for 15 minutes. Just have time to think. Time to I guess, reflect on the day you've had and reflect on the day you're going to have, that's working really quite well. And that's across the whole hospital site. So, you know, we've got 5 hospitals right down from South Staffordshire all the way up to London Road, and we've started doing a bit in Ilkeston, and it's available to all our staff.
Yeah, do you know that is such wise words. I remember when I lost the election in 2017, and you know, it's devastating. And somebody said the wisest words to me was, they just said, Amanda, just be still. And sometimes it is important just to be still and get rid of all that anxiety and all the feeling. And I have to say, I often say to myself, just be still. Love that, Magnus. Thank you. Carl, what about yourself?
I think we've talked about this a lot. We've run a number of social media campaigns, and this week both through the council and also through Community Action Derby. So Community Action Derby is the infrastructure organisation that supports the voluntary sector in the city. They this week are kind of finalising their concept around the new Stay Well scheme. So that's a holistic wellbeing scheme that's being developed across all partners, and you know, there's a real kind of focus on well-being, and that includes things like therapeutic activities, online groups, but also moving forward, you know, actually training people. So we hear about mental health champions, and we have a number of mental health first aiders, for example, at the City Council. But what we're looking to do is really expand that into our neighbourhoods and actually give training to our residents around being Stay Well champions. So you know,
nice.
mental and physical health. Because everyone has a part to play. You know, you don't have to be a qualified clinician or something like that. You know, so it's reinforcing that message about, you know, sometimes it's good to talk, sometimes it's just a bit of social interaction, but more so than that, there's a bit of a plethora of options available should you need more support.
Thank you very much. What about you, James?
2 things, I think. The first would be to talk and talk as much as possible to friends and family and the ones you're missing and the ones you love but can't be with. So I speak to my parents every day, and it's almost like a rota system of friends that every 2 or 3 days, almost mentally tick them off. Just to make sure they're okay, and to make sure that those people who, in my business, the antiques world is very much a lonely one, and it actually attracts quite a few misfits from society, if you like, people that can't hold down a 9 to 5:30 job and don't fit into any pigeonhole. So they like to be standing in a field at 5 o'clock in the morning with a table full of second-hand stuff. So that sort of world has a lot of single people, a lot of people that rely on the auctions for their social lives. So just making sure that all those lonely elderly antiques dealers who we have, just speaking to them on a regular basis. But for me personally, the thing that's kept me going, and we've been so lucky with this weather, is just being outside with nature, really. I'm one of these characters that starts to feel very depressed around November time. Very much aware of seasonal affective disorder, and the fact that if you don't get enough vitamin D, you start to feel a bit down. Of course, vitamin D is generated. Is that absolute rubbish? Is it something that we should just put a line through?
Magnus, I can see it. Yeah, sorry.
There's no evidence that vitamin D has any impact on outcome of COVID-19, one way or the other. Right. What we would say is, and what we're advising, and we've given out 2,000 prescriptions of vitamin D, if your vitamin D is low, have a prescription or buy some over the counter and get up to the right level. But that's because your vitamin D is low, not because it's going to make any impact on the outcome of COVID.
Okay.
So it's not bad to take vitamin D, is it?
Well, taking vitamin D, if you've got low vitamin D, is absolutely the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Don't expect it to make you invincible where COVID's in.
Cross that one off.
I go out in the sun. I love the sun. Thank you. Matt, what about yourself?
Oh, well, don't be afraid to do nothing for a bit and just relax. That's the first thing. But obviously, I mean, every time I've said this in the last few weeks, Amanda, is I'm really busy, and that's a good thing and a bad thing as well. But I think what I've done this week and noticed actually and encouraged is the Skype meetings and the Microsoft Teams meetings and all of that, which we're doing constantly, whether it be for the council or for the hospital trust, because Magnus may or may not know that I work at the trust as well. This week, I've noticed something. Not only that you can get on with the job that you need to do as part of those online sessions, whether it be to fix something or procure something at the hospital that needs to be sorted, or a meeting at the council. I've noticed that actually there's a little bit of extra sort of time spent on just getting to know each other a little bit more, either during the meeting when you may have a little bit of downtime when you're waiting for something to occur or whatever, and you could just chat about where you're from, because I was speaking to some colleagues in America working on a particular issue for the hospital trust this week, and it was really great just to speak to somebody where they were, what time it was of the day, what kind of weather it was, how it's been over there for you, and just things like that. And actually it struck me that it was making the job a lot easier, and it was great to be able to just talk and chat, and I've done that a lot more this week, Amanda, and I think I'd encourage that too. Obviously you have formal meetings where that can't happen so much, but certainly in your day-to-day stuff where you would be just replacing what would normally be a face-to-face support call or technical support call or whatever it might be with your colleagues, you can have that kind of interaction a little bit more. And so I'd encourage that, a little bit more of discussion and just general chit-chat, really, because it really does cleanse the soul in terms of and just talking about the situation and chewing the cud, really, about the whole situation.
Yeah, I would agree. And one of the things I'm always trying to combat is the stigma that surrounds mental health. And I've been putting a series of videos on just to try and encourage people to talk. My mum, she tried to take her life at 17. I was a difficult teenager, by the way. I don't profess to have been brilliant. But the relationship completely broke down. I lost out a lot on that relationship as well. And again, you'll know, my cousin, he did sadly kill himself. And I think we have to talk about these things. What I would say, though, is some people just don't want to talk well. And for me, if you're looking out for mental health signals, sometimes it's about somebody acting out of character. But as an example, if I'm feeling, I actually like to be quiet, and that's me just kind of grounding myself. That's not a bad thing. But it's if somebody acts out of character. And one of the big things, and I know, you know, we've got mostly, there's the four men here, I worry about men's mental health as well. I genuinely do. You know, I often say to people, how are you? And a typical man response is, I'm fine. And do you know what? Does fine mean you're fine? I don't, you know. And I just think we have an obligation sometimes to find out whether fine really means fine. Yeah. Talking.
So I think we should set a task for everybody who's watching, Amanda, is that, I mean, normally we're heading towards the weekend. In normal times, you know, we'd be making arrangements to go out on a social visit or go shopping with somebody or meeting them in a restaurant or a pub or whatever it might be. And obviously that can't happen at the moment. So maybe what we should all do is just pick that person you haven't spoken to for a while and just ring them. Or you know, send them an email, or just get in touch, whichever way it can be. You know, WhatsApp or whatever it might be, and just say, "How you doing?" Because I've got very close friends, which I realise I haven't spoken to properly for you know, for a couple of 3 weeks, and normally it'd be every weekend or whatever. So I'd say that's the thing we should do, is deliberately think, actually, who haven't I spoken to for a while, and just get in touch with them and have a chat. You know, and that's what I would say everyone should, you know, try and do, because they, you know, it might not be for you, it could be for them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think one of the things that I phone my dad frequently, and he started saying at the end of it, you know, I love you. And I kept thinking, he doesn't normally say that. It's like, but it's had this impact where I think we can be a little bit more emotional, and I try to tell people how much I care as well, but it gives a lot of things to think. Sophie, we better move on because I'm just looking at the time. What's the next question, please?
So this one we have had similar before, but I just want to make sure we get it answered. So it says, thank you for reinstating the brown bin service and for keeping the black and blue ones going throughout the pandemic. And thank you to all our amazing refuse workers across the city. Dozens of bins across different areas of Derby seem to be missed each week. When can we expect bins not to be missed?
Matt, I think just a brief answer on that.
Very brief. Things are progressing very well. We've got to remember that we only reinstated the brown bin collections less than a month ago, and the collections this week have either been full in some wards or very nearly, and so we're getting there. There's a huge improvement week on week, and I'd really like to say thank you to the teams for working so hard. So we're very optimistic, actually, of returning to some kind of normality very soon, and it's getting better day by day.
Thank you for that, Sophie. I think we can just move on to the next question. Thanks.
That's great, thank you. What is the current status of cancer and non-COVID-19 related treatments at Derby Hospital?
I might just broaden that out actually as well, and possibly say, how important is it that we look after and think about our own health, physical health as well. And just on that, and I'll come around, but I know one of the things that we're actively trying to say is do not ignore things. I mean, that's the most important thing. And I needed to go to the doctors the other day, and I walked in, said, no, that's what we're here for. But I actually apologise, saying, I'm sorry, I'm wasting your time. I said, no, you're not, that's what we're here for. But let's come, Carl, what do you think about this?
I mean, obviously I'm not based in a hospital, so I wouldn't know what the exact
figures were.
But I think we do keep reinforcing the message to those that we're working with, and particularly those people who are contacting us through the community hub, is that, you know, actually, if you have a need to go to A&E, go to A&E. You know, if you are concerned about something, you know, do not be put off by contacting your GP. Do not be put off, you know, making those enquiries. I think, you know, there has been obviously a drop in A&E admissions, but I don't think people need to be afraid about going to the hospital. Yeah, my father went for a blood test the other day, you know, and again, it was a case of saying, you know, it's entirely okay to go there. You know, the hospital's well managed. There's certain zones, you know, so if people are anxious about going because of COVID, they really shouldn't be, and certainly shouldn't put to one side any other health concerns they have. You know, the NHS is still there to look after the health of the nation, not just respond to COVID.
Well said, actually. James, what about yourself?
I had exactly this conversation actually over the weekend. My sister-in-law is head of oncology in Liverpool Hospital, and she said that in her department, ear, nose and throat cancer, that they had seen a huge drop in referrals. And we had that conversation about, was it because they were afraid to go to the GP and be seen as time wasters when they're so busy and up against all the other things? Or was it something more along the lines of they were afraid to go to the doctor because anyone who had COVID-19 would have gone to the doctor and therefore they were likely to catch it? And from what I understand, it was pretty much a 60-40 to do with fear of going. And then we discussed whether the Nightingale hospitals could be used as a zone for treating the COVID-19 patients and try and clear the hospitals. But she explained quite simply that that wasn't possible and that the scanners weren't there, the specialist staff weren't there in comparison to the amazing teams that they had at the hospital. So it's a difficult one. I think only time, I think it will have to be just time. People will get used to it, like they get used to social distancing, and hopefully they'll start to come back to the hospitals again. But it's certainly a worry, isn't it?
No, absolutely. And what intrigued me, I walked through the door the doctors, and social distancing, you had to obviously do your hands. There was loads of things that were taking place, but the doctor also took my temperature as well, just to make sure, and before he was able to examine me. So, you know, be assured that the precautions are being carried out. Magnus, what about yourself? Any advice on this?
Quite strange. I'm an emergency physician by training, so for the last 15 years, I've actually spent time telling people to stay away if they didn't need to come. I spent the last 10 weeks saying, please do rock up.
Yeah,
we're still open, and strangely enough, we've managed to separate both our emergency departments into COVID potential areas and COVID non-potential areas.
Oh, that's good.
It's as safe as we can possibly make it. So the first assessment you have is a symptoms and sign assessment over whether you potentially have COVID and whether you're in that area of the department. And you know, I've been in the media in the last probably 4 or 5 weeks saying if you've got chest pain, come back. We're on all social media at the moment. One of our consultant cardiologists, Dr. Damien Kelly, has been out there saying, please come in, we need to see you still. Because the fact is that our stroke numbers have gone down, our heart attack numbers have gone down. On extreme days, our emergency department attendances have been less than half what we'd expect them to be. All of which is significant. And cancer referrals have gone down. We usually expect 800 a week. We've been down to 50 a day-ish. So it's significantly less. And the big worry I've got is that people are storing these things up.
Yeah.
If R naught, so the infection rate from the virus, continues to drop, fingers crossed, then we're actually stocking up a whole heap of work that we're going to have to plan to get through, which we are planning that clearly. But it's the sooner you come, the better.
That's a really, really good message, actually. Matt, what about yourself? Anything to add to that?
No, I think that's absolutely right. When we had Gavin, CEO of the Trust, a few weeks ago now, even the message even was then that, you know, if you need hospital treatment, then you should seek it, and it will be there for you. So that is the message, and Marcus has clearly shown that the Hospital Trust have organised things extremely well to keep everybody safe. So please, if you need that support, you must go, because they actually want to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can do great things online as well. I know when I went, I was triaged first online, and vets are doing the same, I have to say. I mean, it's a similar kind of thing. You know, I had a bit of a trauma with one of my dogs, and I literally phoned, and we were able to triage online. So it must be. I absolutely agree. We should keep on using these services. Sophie, what about the next question?
Next we have, how can we continue to avoid a second peak of coronavirus?
Oh, Magnus, I can see a nod there. Let's come to you first.
So I think the important number is the R naught number. So how many people
Explain
will
that,
be,
yeah.
So if somebody has COVID-19, how many people will they potentially infect? And I think at the beginning of the of the pandemic, it was between 2 and 3, depending on which figures you looked at. Every person would infect 3 other people, and then they infect 3 each. In the Midlands, we got that down to 0.68 with social distancing, so below 1. What does that mean? It means essentially if we stayed like this, the virus would finish and die out. We wouldn't have the virus. Social distancing, to that end, we've seen an impact, a very, very positive impact of social distancing. I think the relaxation 10 days ago when the Prime Minister spoke on Sunday evening means that people are more able to think about where they go and what they do. But my advice is, if seriously, if you don't need to go, still do not go. If R goes above 1 again, if the infection rate goes above 1 for a considerable number of days, then the number of infections goes up again, and we get the second wave, which everybody's really worried about. I'm really worried about the second wave. So it's and I know we're balancing essentially the mitigating factors that are having deleterious effects on all our businesses. Completely see that. But my main concern would be if we have a second wave and that rolls into our winter months and a winter flu epidemic, then potentially disastrous effects for us all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to come to you in a minute, Matt, but if I may just come to Carl first. Carl, are you seeing a difference in the hub, by the way? Because I've been volunteering as an example, and the people I've been going to see in terms of shopping are saying, actually, we're feeling a little bit safer. And I wonder what signals that gives in terms of a second peak. But are you seeing any difference in the approach?
I think we've seen some, well documented and, examples highlighted in the media of where people have suddenly gone running out and are not complying with social distancing. But, and I've said it before, the vast majority of people are still observing social distancing. We do see the supermarkets are still operating the systems, and in fact, actually, I think there's probably a greater focus in some places than there was before, because they're mindful of more people now coming. So, other places where before, during the lockdown, people were reluctant to go out, as we saw the businesses opening, they're employing new ways in how they can keep people separate. Certainly, for example, in some of the local supermarkets, they've now got transparent screens in between checkouts to separate the customers where there's a double aisle. Certainly seeing a lot more one-way systems going in as well. So I don't want to give a shout out for Dunelm, but Dunelm opened on Monday and they've got a very effective one-way system around the store. So I think actually people are starting to embed social distancing and responding to it as part of the new normal within supermarkets. And it's not just some, quick hazard tape on the floor. There's actually branded signage, and it's making it a lot easier for people to understand. But there is still a small number of people that aren't complying, and that message will always be, to stay alert. And again, I say to people, if you are concerned about people not complying, if it's a genuine non-compliance, then obviously let us know. Give us a ring, 01332 640 000. Let us know about it, and we can follow that up if you've got genuine concerns.
So on that, just before I come to Matt, is there a dip, have you found, in people needing volunteer support, or is it still at a peak?
We've seen a decline in the calls to the hub, but actually that's what we would expect, because the whole point of the hub was it is around connecting people. So obviously the first wave came in, they were connected. Now, some of those connections might have faltered. Maybe then somebody became ill, somebody actually couldn't continue to provide that support, so they'd come back. But we are seeing a decline in calls. But we're still ready and waiting, because, of course, as furlough lifts, for some people, they might have been providing support. So suddenly that volunteer is unfurloughed, and we need to then find somebody else to provide that voluntary support to a resident. But in the main, those connections that have been made over the last few weeks are being sustained. And so that's relieving the pressure on us centrally.
Thank you,
It's
Matt.
actually what we always wanted. Sorry, it's what we always wanted.
No,
it was the legacy of this would be that people would know who their neighbours were, and they would know people in the street. and we would be looking out for each other much more. So yeah, it's working. It's worked well.
Thank you. Matt, going back to the original question then, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, we've all got a role to play. We know that clearly, and everybody has really played their part in controlling the virus. And Magnus is absolutely right. I mean, the basic message is, we all know this, but it's worth repeating: stay at home as much as possible, work from home if you can, limit your contact with other people, keep your distance 2 meters. We know that too, wherever possible. And of course, don't forget to wash your hands regularly. And if we can all do those things and be rigorous about them, and really play our part, the worries that Magnus quite rightly has about that R value going up and a second wave, we can avoid that, and we must avoid that. But as Carl says, there are baby steps towards some kind of normal, whatever that will be in the coming months. But we need to be very, very careful, and we all have a part to play. So we need not to forget those basic rules, and follow them rigorously.
Yeah, and I think what concerns me is that from a people point of view, a second peak would be devastating. We'd lose more lives, but also economically, I'm just not quite sure how we survive that either. So I think it's a major challenge. James, your views on this?
The first thing I'd like to say is a massive thank you to all those community groups that are out there supporting people like me, who have had a letter from the government saying I shouldn't go anywhere. So I haven't left the house since the 9th of March now. I haven't been anywhere. And the little groups in South Wingfield, Wat Stanwell and Cryche, they phone, they see if you're okay, they go and collect the drugs for you. Now we've got the letter from the government, then I can get online easily with the supermarkets. So I don't need them to go and get shopping. So that was brilliant. But really, the local communities, through places like the Hub, have just come together. And I know more people now than I have ever known in 5 years. I've met more people since Christmas than I've met in 5 years. And it has been absolutely fantastic. Seeing, I think, Matt, you spoke a while ago about, a few weeks ago, about David Cameron's Big Society. And I think this is just exactly what's been going on. But we mustn't lose it now. We can't let down all those people, the guys who've worked in the hospital, the guys at the council, all those people that have done their best to keep this place going. I think it's down to every single individual to make sure that everybody there know. And it needs to be a bit like shaming, a bit like drink driving.
Be mindful. Is it a genuine non-compliance? And report it to us. You know, let us deal with it. Please don't video it. Please don't put it on Facebook. And we can deal with it appropriately, because it could be a misunderstanding, and it could be, you know, people might make an assumption that, well, they can't possibly all live in the same household. Well, we do have families with multi-generations, or HMOs as we call them, houses of multiple occupancy. So, you know, before you decide to name and shame, let's be certain that they are actually non-compliant, and leave that to us to do. Leave that to us.
Let's give a thought to, Amanda, to the businesses, because the businesses are starting to and schools, you know, everybody's having to think about how we can, again, try and make those first few steps to some kind of normality and carry out the business that keeps this country going, obviously. And it's very important to do so. You know, they're struggling with this as well, because they know now that they need to carry out their businesses in very different ways in some cases. And obviously, the top priority for them will be to ensure that if people can return to work, that it's safe to do so, and if they have customers that may be visiting the business, that's safe also. So it must be a big challenge for them, and it's going to take a little time for them to get used to these things. And it sounds, you know, I think the retail industry, who have been at the forefront of this, especially the food retailers, you know, they've done a great job actually of controlling the situation, and where it's essential for people to actually shop or to get supplies. It's been, in my experience, it's been very well managed, and continues to be as well, to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sophie, I'm just going to come to you for a second, because we're thinking about how we start to open the constituency office. And it's not been without its challenges, has it, when you're thinking about it?
So yeah, we're having to think about obviously really wanting to be there and be open for all of the constituents, but also obviously the safety of people who are coming to the office and people who work there, and trying to make sure that we can be open but have limited number of people there so that we are abiding by the rules.
Yeah, and also maybe find a new way of working as well. So we're thinking of doing flexible working or compressed hours. Or there's loads of things that we're trying to consider. Now, I can't believe we mentioned earlier about your clock, and I think you had a challenge for James or something. But anyway, can I leave it with you to explain the story behind this clock? You might need to get closer.
So my clock's been mentioned now on a number of occasions by people, particularly reminding me that it doesn't work. And a good friend of mine called Margaret, who's been a fantastic volunteer in the hub, actually said to me after the second week, I've got a bit of a bugbear. She goes, your clock needs some batteries. Well, James, I don't know if you can tell. I don't know if you can tell from there. What would you say? What, about 1830, 1840 maybe?
It's a bit later than that. It's a 19th century walnut drop case wall clock, and the hood should actually come off frontwards, and you've got a little window there with a pendulum, and it's very dark in the background. But does it have lots of little bands of inlay?
Yes,
around?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. That's known as parquetry inlay, and it was typical of the 1870s. But it's probably made by the Ansonia Clock Company that was based in Massachusetts in the US. And what they used to do, they were partners of the Waltham Watch Company, and they used to export these movements in huge numbers in the 1860s to 1890s. And they would put them in their own walnut or mahogany cases at the time. So it's probably an English case, but it's known as an American drop dial wall clock from about 1870.
But it doesn't need batteries.
Paul, what he's trying to say is worth about 20 quid, mate. I'm sorry.
I know. Oh, no.
Oh, James, thank you so much. That's absolutely brilliant. Matt, brilliant. Also, we need an update, 2 updates, Cakes and Thor.
I haven't seen Thor for a while.
Oh no, I hope Thor's okay.
Yeah, I've been searching. I'm sure he is. I will do my utmost to try and find the Thor update for next week. Cakes, yes, she's baking them. Bake maker or cake maker. Yeah, the hospital's been well serviced with cupcakes, and I did get a little bit of a delivery of myself as well. So I didn't ask for them. She put them on my doorstep. There was probably a little too many for probably the staff at the Royal. So she dropped some off to me, and they were absolutely amazing.
Oh wow, that is. They always look so fantastic. And thank you to everybody who does all things like that. It's just.
Can I just give a shout out as well, because there's a wonderful individual in the city who is a very active volunteer, gets involved with lots and lots of community activities in Sinfin, a good friend as well, Jess, and she's just started doing online live baking with Jess. And in fact, she recently featured on East Midlands Today. She's really gathered some followers, but it's really kind of, some great recipes, really easy to do. And we go back earlier about, what's good for your mental health. There's things online that you can connect to, feel part of a community, even if it's online. And then obviously afterwards have something fabulous to eat. So have a look on Facebook, Baking with Jess. No,
that's a really great idea. It's just reminded me, we're putting on Facebook today, we've got a workout going on, Sophie, haven't we? So around mental health, we've got one of our a trainer from Darley, actually, who's doing a local workout for us. We've obviously got our hair competition, which makes me happy every time I see it, because we've got these most amazing before and afters. I don't think we're going to have time for the final question, Sophie.
No.
We just quickly go around and just have some parting words of wisdom from everybody. Matt, let's come to you first. Words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom from me? Are you sure?
Yeah, always.
I don't know. I think I would just say, going back to what I've said, find somebody to give a call this weekend or even this evening. Find a few people that you think of that you haven't spoken to for a while, friends or acquaintances, and just drop them a line. Genuinely, I think I found it really worthwhile Talk about nothing, talk about something, whatever. That's what I would say, Amanda, this week is everybody just get your phone out and think, who haven't I spoken to for a while, and do it.
Beautiful idea, lovely, thank you. Sophie, what about you?
I would say that it's been lovely being able to actually go and see a friend or a member of the family in the park or things like that. It feels like a luxury. It almost feels naughty, but that we do need, like we were saying earlier, to still stay at home, and we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, brilliant, thanks. Carl?
I'm a big fan of random acts of kindness. We've seen some in the city. We've seen people tying red love balloons to lampposts in the middle of the night. We've seen people randomly delivering flowers to people, and they don't know who's organised it or whatever. And you know what I will be saying at the moment is there's been an army of people out there doing stuff. You know, just say thank you, even if they've been. You know, you might have watched somebody coming to your neighbour, for example, and you, for whatever reason, haven't been able to help that neighbour out. Maybe you've still been working yourself. Why don't you say thank you to that person? Not next week, but the week after. It's National Volunteers Week, you know, and you know, how will we celebrate and acknowledge that, given the movement that's behind the response and the challenge that we currently face?
Thank you very much, Magnus.
I think mine would be to all the key workers, not just those in the NHS, but the lorry drivers, the supermarket workers, the volunteers who are all out there. I think it's okay not to be okay, and you've absolutely got to acknowledge that yourself, and just take those 15 minutes just to be completely still. Try and empty your mind of all those anxieties and be peaceful and quiet, and it's completely acceptable to do that.
Lovely, thank you. James?
Two little things really. One would be, whenever I'm feeling stressed, if the weather's nice enough, just lie on your back and watch the clouds going overhead, and it for me anyway, it just makes everything feel okay, but even when it's not. And the other thing would be, for everybody who doesn't have to go out, if you don't have to work, let's keep supporting the NHS as much as possible. And unless you really have to go, even if it's for your own mental health, if you need to do that, go out. But if you don't have to, don't. Stay at home. Let's try and keep that R number as low as possible.
No, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much to all of you for joining us tonight. Matt, Carl, are you here next week?
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant, thank you. Sophie, who have we got next week? Do we know?
Yes, we've got, just bear with me. We've got Krishna Kalunpa from Hospitals of Derby and Burton, and Christopher Mallett from the Derby Telegraph.
Oh, so that should be really interesting. So that'd be great. Thank you very much. Remind me next week to tell you the story about the chicken that was on the other side of the road that I had to get to this side. It was a very traumatic story, as you will know, Sophie, because I shared it with you. And I literally, well, I'll tell you just quickly, I literally looked out my window and there was a chicken on the loose and petrified of birds.
There was actually a chicken that needed to cross the road, for real.
Yes, it was, genuinely. And I got my daughter on FaceTime going, I need help getting this chicken to cross the road to get to the other side. And I knocked on some neighbours' doors, and they were going, oh my goodness, there really is a chicken. It was such a random thing.
I can't wait for this story.
Well, the good news is the chicken survived, and anyway, there we go. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Hope James and Magnus, you'll come back as well sometime. It'd be great to see you. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.